A trip around the world is in many ways the ultimate journey on Earth, circling the planet, crossing oceans and continents until you eventually return to your starting point. Nowadays, anyone with a couple $1,000s saved up can circumnavigate the world in just a few days by picking the right plane tickets. But when exactly did going around the world become possible for a business traveler or a tourist? Let's explore. The first recorded circumnavigation of the globe was the expedition of Ferdinand Magellan, who in 1519 led a fleet of 5 Spanish ships to find a path westward from Europe to the East Indies around the Americas. Though Magellan himself died along the way in the Philippines, one of the ships, the Victoria, did make it all the way around the world under the command of Juan Sebastian Elcano, returning to Spain in 1522 with 18 remaining sailors. Magellan's voyage was funded by the Spanish government, but it blazed the trail for others to follow. The first record of a circumnavigation done by a private traveler was that of Francesco Carletti, a merchant from Florence who circled the world between 1594 and 1602 in the interests of his family's trading business. From Florence, Carletti set out westward with his father Antonio to Cape Verde, where he bought enslaved people to bring across the Atlantic to sell in the Caribbean. After traveling in the Spanish colonies of the New World, the Carlettis traveled to Asia on one of the Manila galleons, ships that voyaged between Acapulco on the Pacific coast of New Spain in modern Mexico and Manila in the Philippines, connecting the 2 Spanish colonies and carrying the first regular trade across the Pacific. The Carlettis did business for several years in East Asia, at one point being arrested by the Portuguese in Macau for breaking trading laws. Antonio died in Macau in 1598, but Francesco continued on to Portuguese Goa in India, where he sold silk he'd bought while in Macau. Carletti set out to return from Goa to Europe in 1601, but the Portuguese ship he was traveling on was captured by the Dutch off St. Helena in the South Atlantic, who had just started a war with the Portuguese. Though Carletti, as a citizen of neutral Tuscany, was allowed to go free, his wares were confiscated and sold off by the Dutch. After trying and failing to get the Dutch to compensate him for his losses, Francesco left the Netherlands first to Paris and then back to Florence, where he was hired by the Medici dukes to help develop the port of Livorno. It was there he wrote his travelogue, with the short and snappy name of Reasoning by Francesco Carletti the Florentine on things he saw in his travels in the West Indies and the East as in other countries. In the 1964 English translation, the title was shortened to My Voyage Around the World. Since Carletti's goal was to earn a profit, his voyages could be considered the first business trip around the world. What about the first tourist trip around the world? That honor might go to another Italian, Giovanni Francesco Gemelli Careri of Naples, around 100 years after Carletti. Though Gemelli Careri did buy and sell goods along the way to fund his travels, his previous job was as a judge rather than a merchant, and his goal was primarily just to see the world. Gemelli Careri's circumnavigation from 1693 to 1698 went eastward instead of westward. He split his travelogue Giro del Mondo, Around the World, into 6 volumes, covering the Ottoman Empire, Persia, India, China, the Philippines, and New Spain. In addition to his personal travels, the work also describes the nature, history, and politics of the lands he passed through, many of which would be unfamiliar to European readers of the day. In Ottoman lands, Gemelli Careri visited the pyramids of Giza, the religious sites of the Holy Land, and the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, among many others. He crossed into Safavid Persian lands in modern Armenia on his way to the capital Isfahan, where he saw the funeral of Shah Suleiman I and the coronation of Shah Hussein. After seeing the ruins of Persepolis, Gemelli Careri continued on to India, visiting the Portuguese colonies of Damau and Goa, and having a brief audience with the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb. Gemelli Careri departed Goa toward Portuguese colonies in Malacca and Macau, and then onward to China. In China, Gemelli Careri reported that some Portuguese missionaries suspected the Italian traveler might have been a spy for the Pope, a misunderstanding which helped Gemelli Careri secure an audience with the Kangxi Emperor. Gemelli Careri also visited the Grand Canal and the Great Wall, and the Lantern Festival in Guangdong. After returning to Macau, Gemelli Careri continued on to the Philippines before embarking on a, quote, tedious and dreadful voyage to New Spain on board a Manila galleon. In New Spain, Gemelli Careri visited Acapulco, Mexico City, and the pyramids of Teotihuacan. He attributes the pyramids to the Olmecs, who in reality lived somewhat further south in Mexico, but that's a minor inaccuracy, especially since he goes on to claim that the Olmecs were the descendants of the people of Atlantis, in an attempt to explain why their pyramids resembled those he saw in Egypt. After a brief stop in Havana, Gemelli Careri joined a Spanish treasure fleet back to Madrid and then back to Italy, where he would publish his travelogue in 1699. In the centuries following Gemelli Careri, circumnavigating the world became ever easier. 3 major milestones occurred in 1869 and 1870, those being the openings of the first railroads across India and the US, and of the Suez Canal. These routes shortened the journey around the world considerably, inspiring French author Jules Verne to write Around the World in 80 Days, in which a wealthy Londoner, Phileas Fogg, and his companions circled the globe in just 80 days to win a bet. These same routes were also used by many real-world circumnavigators in the 1870s and 1880s, including former U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant, King Kalakaua of Hawaii, and journalist Elizabeth Cochrane, writing as Nellie Bly, who set a record by completing the journey in just 72 days. The current record for an around-the-world journey, excluding astronauts in orbit, is just under 31.5 hours on a Concorde supersonic passenger jet in 1995. Many spacecraft have orbited the Earth in under 90 minutes, although it's hard to determine which of the hundreds of human spaceflights actually orbited the fastest, especially since the NASA database doesn't have a very good search function. Still, it's quite impressive how far circumnavigation has come in the past 500 years. One might even say it's come full circle. And as always, thanks for watching.